Today we're going to be talking about the transform tools in Illustrator. At the moment I'm using Illustrator CC 2018. So I'm going to be referring to the 253 Graphics for Illustration course, and what I'm speaking about, and specifically the assignment we're doing this week is building a clock. So we're not going to learn all about all the tools. You can watch some videos for all the details, but I'll tell you the ones that I focus on for this week. So I'm going to zoom in, show you a couple things. The biggest deal that you need to learn and understand this week to really do your assignment is obviously you all know how to work with shapes, but what we're talking about this week is the rotate tool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a line here using the line tool, and I'll make the stroke on that a little bit thicker, like so. And so here's what the rotate tool does. It obviously rotates things, but how do you get to it? Well, there's a tool for it over here. Here it is, the rotate tool. But you can also right click and you can go to transform, you can go to rotate. Now, both of these do the same thing. They lead to this dialog box. And this dialog box, if I were to type in a certain amount of degrees, like let's say 60 degrees, if I check preview, you'll see it shows it rotating 60 degrees. Well, with the move tool, actually the path selection tool here, I can hover over the edge and rotate something. So essentially, who cares? Well, what you care about is the ability to copy. So check this out. If I press copy, I can make a single copy. Now that's sort of handy, but you could also press Control C, copy, Control F, and you could have just rotated a second shape. So why is that handy? Here's why it's handy. There's an option up here if you go to Object, Transform, called Transform Again. The keystroke is Control D. The key to this trick is learning to use Control D. Any transformation, you can use Control D to do the transformation again. You have to make a copy the way I did, but if you make a copy and then you press OK, if you press Control D, it'll actually perform the action one more time. My computer is not doing it, but trust me, it works. I don't know if there's a time limit on it or what, but let me do it one more time. Here we go. Transform. Once again, we're going to rotate 60 degrees, press copy, and then press Control D, and there you go. So if I instead chose 30 degrees, like so, transform, rotate, and I said, well, let's say 10 degrees, copy. There we go, like that. Now that's rotating around a central axis. When you rotate things in Illustrator, they rotate based off pivot points. And the pivot point is traditionally right in the middle of whatever object. So see that little spot there? That's the middle. So if I go over the edge, it rotates around that pivot point. One thing that the rotate tool does, you have to use the tool to do this, is if you click on the rotate tool over here, that's it, right there. That pivot point shows up. You can see it. You can move it with the rotate tool. So if you choose to click here, all I did was left click, and check this out. I can rotate around that new pivot point, which is moved from the middle to here. Here's why that's relevant. So let's say that you did want to make a clock, or maybe the spokes of a tire, or a flower. Lots of things you could make with this. What you could do is click the rotate tool and move the pivot point to here. Now the trick for this, and it has to be a keystroke for it to work, is you hold down the Alt key and you'll see 3 or 4 dots appear beside the crosshair. That's right underneath the line that I drew. Now if I click, boom, check that out, all of a sudden the rotate screen pops up. So if I said I wanted this to rotate 30 degrees and I pressed copy, Then I press Control D, it'll rotate around this axis. And you're probably starting to get the idea of why this is handy. There is something you're going to see in a lot of videos that makes sense to me. If you notice, there's a perfect circle right there in the middle. Well, it's not perfect, but it's a circle. What a lot of people do when they teach this the first time, a lot of books, what they do, let me delete all this extra stuff, is they draw a circle underneath of whatever it is they're trying to rotate, and that circle is just kind of a placeholder. It may or may not stay there. Then you can use the align tools to center things up. And by the way, you're not going to see those align tools if you are set up with Windows Essentials. My workspace has been modified a little bit. This is Essentials Classic, which I prefer. But if you had Essentials open, it would look different. When you went to your Properties panel, you'd have to work. Not much harder, but see right there, there's the align tools. Now the align tools work the same as they did in Photoshop, except for the fact that in here you can align to something. So you can align to the artboard, the big board, or to the selection, whatever you have selected. That's the default, just like Photoshop. But in this case, now this is no different. It's just the fact that I'm going to press Control Y, which is the same as outline mode, to show you this little X right there in the middle. What's different is that with the object you want to rotate selected and the rotate tool, I could hover until I see the word center there. Then I alt click, see those little dots again, and there you go. I can press copy and then Control D for transform again to go all the way around this guy. Do I have to keep this in the middle? No, but you probably will. I'm sure you're starting to picture your retro clock now and how you're going to build that. Essentially, that's the key move for this week to work. Now, there are other transform tools that we're going to be discussing in the classroom. I'm not going to go into complete detail with all of them here, but I will mention them. One is the scale tool, which essentially is almost useless. We could scale things before. What's different about the scale tool, I suppose, is the Control D capabilities once again. And we're not going to go into all the details on that. That's not going to come in super handy this week. Another one that's a strange one, if you go on to transform, you'll keep seeing them, is reflect. Reflect is interesting. If you drew half of something, then you could reflect the other half of that thing that you drew. So if I were to take the pen tool, for example, and make a shape like this, and I wanted to make sure that it was the same on both sides, I'm going to use the align tool to make these points line up. And yes, you can make points line up in here. But there we go. I could also distribute the points evenly if I wanted to, which is kind of fun too. Of course, look at that. The align tools don't pop up in this in Essentials mode, where if I switch back to my workspace to Essentials Classic, they normally do appear up here, and I can align my anchor points if I wanted to. So I could distribute them all evenly, which is kind of cool. But essentially, I could go to transform and reflect and copy. You can always make copies of transformations, and then I can do half, just like that. Now, if you wanted to combine those together, because there's two open shapes, there are keystrokes for that. And if you select 2 points that aren't touching like this, you can combine them. You can right click and just go to what's called join, and that'll join them together. So that is joining right there, join. So really that's all it does. It just reflects things, which is nice. So that's one of the tools. Now there's more tools in here, more transform tools. There's Shear, which is an odd one, but it gives you that kind of fast and the furious look, or that italic look, where you can make anything tilt. So transform, shear. All you have to do is just put an angle in there, and you can see what shear does. Don't find myself using that one very much personally. There's some other transform tools in here. The odd one is move. And move is weird because, of course, I can move things around the screen. But one of the benefits of move, again, is copy. So if I were to say that I wanted the object to move over however big it is, let's say 50 pixels across, 0 pixels down, right? I want to click preview so I can see that. I could say I want it to move this far across and then press copy. And again, Control D would keep doing that. Never find myself doing that personally. Again, some of these tools, so I will warn you, they probably will come in handy sometime in my near future. I just haven't found the use for them yet. But one that I have found a use for is the rotate tool. The other thing that we're going to learn about this week, and you can see videos on, I'm going to briefly mention it, is combining shapes using the shape builder. So if I draw a circle here and a circle here, and let's say that I wanted to combine these shapes, I will mention first in the it's one thing that Essentials is kind of nice about Essentials, and it's lacking in Essentials Classic, is the fact that in the Properties panel you have these Pathfinder options. So the Pathfinder could combine these two shapes together. I want to make sure it's clear what shape's on top here. Let's say the red shape is on top. Let's select these two. So if I click here, it'll combine the two together. If I click here, again, I have to have them selected. This is unite. This is minus front. So whatever's in the front, which happens to be the blue circle, is going to subtract. And this is going to grab the area they intersect. And this is going to grab the area where they outersect, or it's going to exclude, is what it's called. So there you go. Exclude the middle. It's nice there. That's a nice little eyeball shape. That's an example of something you could grab. For example, if you wanted to make an eye really quickly, there's a lot of shapes that are hidden within shapes whenever you make the two interact. Well, sometimes this can get kind of confusing. Let's say that I wanted to do this right here, where I just wanted this little red piece to be cut out on top of the black one. I really don't have a way to do that. I used to have to do this. Press Control C and Control F. That's paste in front. And then I would select these two shapes, and then I would do this. And that's how I would get here. Well, I did that constantly, and I think a lot of people did. And that's where this new tool came from, which is called the Shape Builder. The Shape Builder is a tool. It's over here. This is the Shape Builder, this guy right here. And what's cool is if you click on the objects, you can drag across them and combine them, just like you could over here. But the great thing is, if you hold down the Alt key, that you can subtract. So whenever you hover over a shape and you see it get selected, the way you see it selected here, if you hold down the Alt key, you'll see a minus, and you can subtract. And that is a world of, that's a huge help for me in the classroom. All right, so those are some of the basics from what we're going to be talking about in class this week. I hope you found it helpful. Have a good day now.